And I am glad we started with kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Is love and kindness the same thing in your books?
It's part of it, for sure.
Okay.
Because I think there are just a lot of things that we bring as human beings that are not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And we all bring our histories with each other. And when we enter a marriage, I think we don't recognize at first how much kindness will be required to deal through some of the more difficult situations.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not even kindness just to the spouse, but it may transcend your direct spouse, and it may go into the extended family.
Do you have a sister friend who you can talk to about your imperfections, vulnerabilities, uncensored truths, journeys, and victories? Welcome to the lounge.
Our experiences, coupled with scriptural truths, continues to mold us and shift our paradigms. The vision is to help us all lead the best lives God proposed for each individual.
We hope our stories, our conversations, and that of others allows you to view life from another lens, regardless of your season. Come on in, sisters. Let's talk. Seriously, when we are young, I don't think it's not even young. When we come into marriage, I don't think most of the time we truly recognize that. Like, we take that as it's a big thing, because and I think somebody mentioned in one of our other episodes, that is something we need to talk about even when we dated, even before we say I do. Like, understand that person's family, understand what is important to that person in their family, and see, am I able to accommodate that? Am I able to let that person be who, yes, they come in to start a new life with you, but am I able to accommodate who they have been to their family? Because they can't just switch and drop everything and be with you or start something new with you. It takes work. Well, welcome, listeners, to another week on Sisters Let's Talk podcast. We are so excited for this episode today. I am your host, Fumi. I wanted to say my name is Lucia. Weird.
So I am Fumi and she's Lucia. I don't think I can be Fumi though.
I am Fumi and Lucia, and today we're super excited to have Angela on the phone. Do you go by Angela or Angie?
For my friends, I go by Angie, so that means you can call me Angie.
But that's not all. We feel special. So yes, we have Angie on the podcast today. Welcome, Angie.
Well, thank you very much, Lucia and Fumi. I'm super excited to be here. And since you said this was a casual setting, so I thought it would be appropriate to have you call me Angie.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, Angie, let's start this conversation. So since we're friends, tell us a little bit about Angie. Who is Angie?
Wow.
That's a loaded question.
I know.
No, that's a great question.
What makes Angie smile?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's being able to bring kindness into every place I go. So if you ask me who I am, I try to be a spreader of kindness. I try to be good to every human being I encounter. I know from experience, everybody's battling something that you know nothing about. And so saying good morning, hi, how's your day going? picking up something that someone dropped. Just being human, I would say, is who I am.
That is beautiful. That I just
That's a
wish
life
we
lesson
could
right there.
that's it. That's a life lesson right there. I wish we could put it on a billboard and just say, I think we see it and we take it as a cliche, like just be kind. Like just say good morning and actually mean good morning. It is. Like I used to work at a school and then people would just come in and do you know? Like, no, just say good morning. Like
Right.
it changes the whole conversation. It changes everything. Like,
And I
just
think more so being
Mhm.
intentional. So it's not just the canned good morning, but
Yeah.
if you sense that something is not going well, maybe even following up with, you didn't sound very convinced, or is
Mhm.
something going on? You'll be surprised at how much people actually open up, even at the cash register, or
Yeah.
if you're ordering food on the
Mhm.
drive-through. So
Yep.
just making sure you look at the person and sense whether their I'm good is a canned I'm good, or if maybe there is something else.
Yes, definitely. I can't agree with you more. That is, it is like just start off with being kind. Some days it actually makes your day better, even if you're having a bad day. It does make your day better when you intentionally try to be nice to somebody else. It's just
And
me.
I think there's something also super key on that, which
Mhm.
is I will not stop being kind because someone else may be uncomfortable with my kindness. That is on their end, because I don't want to be demotivated from being kind and being who I am.
That is beautiful.
Be true to yourself.
Yes, be true to yourself. Yeah, that is beautiful.
There are just a lot of things that we bring as human beings that are not perfect.
Mhm.
And we all bring our histories with each other. And when we enter a marriage, I think we don't recognize at first how much kindness will be required to deal through some of the more difficult situations.
Mhm.
And maybe not even kindness just to the spouse, but it may transcend your direct spouse, and it may go into the extended family. So it's humbling, and I don't know that we go into it thinking about that, but I would say over the years, for me, love is demonstrated versus spoken. And so it is one of those things where you can tell me I love you, but if you don't show me with your actions, which kindness is one of them, then I'm not sure that you love me. So for me, absolutely. I think kindness and love are hand in hand.
So if I may ask a question, this is not directly to you, but then why, since in marriage, if we're talking about marriage or a relationship, why bring in the extended family? Like what's the importance of them in a marriage where you have two people?
Sure. So I think for me, the importance is when you marry someone, you marry their family.
Right.
And there are dynamics
Mhm.
that maybe at first are not well understood. And you just don't marry your spouse and have them forget their family, and same for me. So I think it's something that we bring into the marriage, and it may be easy to navigate or difficult to navigate, but I think the importance is you're marrying into two families that are coming together.
And I seriously, when we are young, I don't think it's not even young. When we come into marriage, I don't think most of the time we truly recognize that. Like we take that as it's a big thing, because and I think somebody mentioned in one of our other episodes, that is something we need to talk about even when we dated, even before we say I do. Like understand that person's family, understand what is important to that person in their family, and see, am I able to accommodate that? Am I able to let that person be who yes, they come in to start a new life with you, but am I able to accommodate who they have been to their family? Because they can't just switch and drop everything and be with you or start something new with you. It takes work.
Yes, I would say that that is very true. And I think one of the things that I've learned throughout my life is there is no rush.
Mhm.
And so it's super important to get to know the dynamics of the family, even whoever you're considering as a spouse, for exactly the reason that you pointed out, Fumi, is understand their dynamics, their values, their celebrations, their bond even. I think one of the things that could be a struggle is when you get married and you think, I come first as the spouse, or I am, once you marry, you leave your blood family, which is, I think, what biblically it says, and then you form a family with your spouse. That doesn't always work out that way. And so you may be forming a family where some of those beliefs are challenged greatly.
I know you had two sides of the coin with your experience. Is there, in retrospect, is there a way to make that a thing? Ask it as, yes, you know what it should be, right? You're supposed to leave like the Bible says, leave your mother and father and cling to your spouse. But at the same time, it is not automatic. How do you blend those? How do you make it work? Or how could you make it work?
Sure. So I think for me, there is first the getting to know your potential spouse. And as I said, the family dynamics. I think in hindsight, I would have asked questions such as, what do you feel your responsibility is with your parents, with your siblings? So I can understand and go into something with a full understanding of what that dynamic and what those values are, versus uncovering them later into the marriage, because then it's a shift. Yeah. And so I think that that's difficult. And I think it's perfectly fine to say, do you feel you have an obligation to your parents and to your siblings or anybody else going into it? If the answer is yes, then I would have a choice to say, okay, I understand. And how would we plan on managing that, and what exactly does it mean? So I think there is opportunity to blend those things.
Yeah.
But I think it comes from an honest conversation and an understanding.
I love that. And and listeners, I hope like we know it's not too late to even start those conversations. Some of the things that we've unraveled, being able to talk about them now. So Angie, what was your experience that that I know you've kind of hinted that you had some struggle in some of these areas, right? What was your experience like being married?
Specifically related to extended family or in general?
Extended family in general, like I'm looking at you like you have both sides of the coin.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So, and again, it's up to what you're comfortable sharing.
Sure.
What is your experience been in a relationship, and maybe some of the things that you think like, oh my gosh, if I could do this all over again, this is what I'll do.
Okay. Yeah, I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I think the first thing, and I have to back up into the idea of getting married. I know I was very much in love with my ex-spouse. So there you have it. I am not married anymore. And at the time I was very much in love, and I felt that I had to follow a traditional path, which is that we see growing up as girls or women. You go to college, you graduate, you get a job, you have a spouse, you have children, and you really don't understand that there is maybe an alternative. You just see or think this is what we've seen in our family, and so that's what we're going to do. I also had the idea that since my mom married when she was 21, that if I married later, I would be more mature. And so I ended up getting married at about 26. In hindsight, I don't think I was mature enough because there were so many things to understand. And part of it was giving it more time to get to know my spouse. We had a relationship right out of college. And for one of the 2 years before we got married, we spent a lot of time together. The other year we were long distance. And so that it was good for conversation, but the communication back then was very limited, just based on circumstances. And again, in hindsight, I wish I would have waited longer because I felt I had to follow this traditional path. But I did feel in love, and I felt that the person I married was a good match for me, and for a long time it was. I think one of the things that I still try to figure out, and this is the part where honesty comes in.
Yeah.
The scariest day of my life was the day I got married. It was not necessarily, I wouldn't say the happiest, it was the scariest.
Why?
The reason why I say that is for me, not only did I felt I was going to faint, I felt I was jumping into a black hole that I knew nothing about, and it needed to last forever.
Wow.
And so for me, it was not that I didn't have confidence in who we were. It was from now on, the unknown begins.
Yes.
I know nothing, and yet I am committing for life. And so knowing who I am and knowing that sometimes I get to a point where if I don't feel that there is fulfillment, maybe mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I hit a stop. And so thinking that, hey, I know myself, but this means I don't get to stop. This means I get to go. So it was, I think, introspective at that time, but I didn't understand it. And in hindsight, I wish I would have said, I don't know that I'm ready. I think we need to date a little bit longer. But then you feel like there's no turning back.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as being married, first year was super difficult. I think we were both, trying to come together and had our own customs and our own upbringing. And so trying to combine those even down to how you cut an onion. Was a reason for some headbutting.
Yep.
I can relate to the onion.
And it's absolutely true. It's like, here is how my mom taught me. Well, this is how my mom taught me. So who's gonna win? and nobody needs to win, but it becomes a conversation.
Yep.
So I think the first year was, I recall of great adjustment, in such adjustments that from time to time, I wondered, were we going to make it? Because there was just a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You add to that we were both new to the US. And so there is also the added pressure of adjusting to a new culture, a new language, a new job, a lot of stress. So I think it was a hard combination. In general, I would say I think our marriage was friendly. I think we were always friends, and that was a good basis for the marriage.
Yeah.
However, I would say over time, I think one of the things I learned, and this is something I've been studying more now that I'm not married, is I don't know if the word is unfairness, but when we marry for potential versus for who someone truly is. I don't think I married thinking I want to change him, but I think I married thinking he is as driven as I am because I see him being driven on a few examples. He and I will conquer things together, and he is a good match for my energy and my drive. And I saw that in a few examples. I think over time, I don't know if it was something that was really natural for him, or if he had that drive because he had met me and he knew what my personality and drive was. And so was he matching mine to see a connection? But in reality, was it there truly or naturally? And I would say, I don't know. I think that was one of the reasons. So the extended family may be one. And as I'm talking about what we see as potential, because it also puts a burden on the person because we think they're going to act that out. So had I waited longer, could I have uncovered certain things that were different and were fundamental? I'll give you a clear example. I am extremely driven. I'm always looking to progress at work. I'm always thinking if I want something, I have to go get it and do it for myself.
Yep.
If I want the bigger house, I better get the bigger job. So, I'm not expecting anything, but I thought my spouse had that same drive. And I think I ended up finding myself rowing the boat a little bit harder and starting to get tired and rowing and feeling like, okay, what happened with who I thought you were? So I think, again, meditating back on some of those things, understanding truly who a person is, or what really motivates them or not motivates them.
That is this very interesting. And just talking, I think we lost Lucia, but she'll come back. But just talking about that topic and just listening to you, and this is me just being curious, looking back, do you think because it keeps coming up every time in these discussions that we're having in this series, communication and expectation, are they factors that you think played in the life of the marriage or in the ending of it? Like, was your communication good? How did that go? Or did you have more expectation than you think that you actually saw? I know you talked about the potential part of it, but
so I would say at first I didn't think it was an expectation, and I think that's what was hard. Is I didn't think it was potential. I thought that was the driver, and so for me, it was important to have someone that was driven. And so when I saw drive, I thought it was factual, and maybe it was at the moment. So I was not necessarily thinking potential. I was thinking this is it.
This is it.
And so therefore we have matching energies, and I will have someone that is navigating the same pace and with some of the same goals that we would have together. So I think that was one. As far as communication, absolutely. I think it is very difficult to have a successful marriage without one, open communication and openness, because I think there is a couple of differences there. There are things that one spouse may want to talk about that the other may not be open to. Or maybe it's a hard topic and they just don't know how to address it. And so that's where the extended family comes, where one person is making themselves vulnerable and saying, here is how I'm feeling, here is what's going on. But the other person is really not, I don't know what the word would be. I would say the other person is conflicted. And instead of opening up, they maybe don't really have an open conversation. And I think that starts becoming a snowball. Definitely. So communication is key. And I would say being able to talk about anything without taking huge offense. I think that's a really, really hard thing because it can feel like an attack. But if you think about how much courage it takes for someone to bring something up that they may have been thinking about for months or weeks, And then feeling that the other person is not receptive breaks down the communication.
Yeah. That is essential. It is essential. So life, being married, right? How do you come to the point that you say, I'm done? Or we can't do it anymore? What brings you to that point?
So if I was to be perfectly honest, and I've said this to others before, I think for me, it was a decision of, if I stay in this marriage, I was thinking, I'd rather not be alive. And so I almost took it as a life or death decision. For other factors, it was not just the marriage factor, but we also had some just family dynamics that were really, really taxing. And being in the middle of all of it, plus holding a full-time job, plus having 2 children, whose emotional, I would say, well-being was very attached to me. I found myself in the middle mediating a lot, and it became too much for me to handle. So I think when I got to the point of feeling I'd rather maybe just go, and I should say, I think this is sometimes a taboo topic, but I also struggle with depression and anxiety. So when you compound all of those things, my thought was, I have a responsibility to my children, and what I can carry today is myself and my children. I don't have the bandwidth, the energy, the capacity to carry more than the weight I'm carrying right now. And I'll add, I was also the breadwinner. So there was just so much on my shoulders.
Wow.
A lot, absolutely. And that's what it was. It became, there is so much to carry. And then I also had to try and figure out my ex-husband's emotional well-being and what his struggles were. And so I think I would say, for the first time, I thought, if I don't survive, then it doesn't matter. Put your, what is it in the airplane? They say, put your mask on first.
Mask on first.
And so many of us didn't understand that until you realize, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't do anything for others. So the point of no return was feeling completely depleted. And then I think there is also the trust. And for me, the trust was not necessarily infidelity. It was more, I trusted that we would do this together in somewhat of a equal weight. I was not necessarily saying equal money, but that we would carry the weight together. And I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. And so how can I trust when for years and years I've expressed, I'm tired, this is too much for me. And I didn't see necessarily what I thought was an adequate response. And maybe that's another reason, right? The expectations.
Yeah, the expectation.
Hey, could you go get a different job and make more money? And maybe no action is an answer, right? No answer is an answer.
Yep.
So it, fairly or not, became something where I would say, don't let me find out that I can do it alone, because if I find out, I will do it alone. Make sure that you're indispensable for this family. Indispensable.
That is a big point. I think we talked about it in one of our episodes, that everybody, yes, we all have to feel like we're needed and valued. So if you had felt that you're valued, do you think you would still be able to, that load will be lighter?
So I think the value comes in what's significant for each person. Maybe for me, feeling valued with someone bringing me flowers doesn't do it. But if I know that you're trying to go find a different job and you're really trying, I feel heard. So it's whatever is is important to me. Even with the extended family situation, for the last 10 years that I expressed some concerns that were affecting my mental health, at the end, I didn't feel heard. And it was very, very hard because I was saying, this is about my mental health.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that you care. And therefore, you don't value me enough to prioritize my mental health. And so again, value comes from what you feel is important to each of you.
Yeah. And I think that is the point we were making, like you as yourself need to know what you want, and that other person needs to know, this is what my spouse wants. So how can I meet that need? How can I help that need? How can I make that need valuable? I think it is very important in any relationship, even the ones with our kids, even the ones with co-workers or anybody. We need to get to that point where we care about what that person cares about and not just about us.
Right. And I think part of the value is also not feeling invalidated. One of the things that was hard for me to learn at the end, and we were married for 18 years, together for 20, was that all the times I shared and I was vulnerable about how I felt affected, at the end, I heard the words, I didn't really think you were serious, or it was that serious.
That was the point I was actually going to bring up, because it's one thing to sympathize, it's one thing to empathize. I can say, I hear you, and you are saying this is what you need, and I repeat it back to you. My spouse needs this. This is what she's asking me of, or this is what he's asking me of. But do I truly? I mean, to an extent, you can't understand completely what that person is going through or what they're trying to say to you, but there has to be a certain level of understanding. And sometimes that understanding might come with communication. That understanding might come with the language. Like we just talked about it, for me, when you say something and the other person interprets it differently, right? So it comes back to the communication. So all these years, you were saying, Angie, how you're feeling and expressing, but did they truly grasp the gravity of it versus like, oh yeah, it's just something small. And it happens all the time, and it's sad that, it took this long, right? And the question is, how do we get around this? How do we navigate this where, someone is not in it 18 years, and at this point, you are at your brink. How do you not get there?
I think part of it may be asking the really tough questions. One that was also a surprise for me, and I think back of how could I have done differently? And it was something that would require action on his part. So it was more of, here is how I feel, and here is something that would help me feel better. And it was something I didn't have ownership of. It was something he would need to address with his family member. And I know it was hard. And I think for many years I said, I've done as much as I can to put myself aside to accommodate the family member. But at this point, my depression is severely enough that I really need to see some action on this. And understanding later on that my ex really didn't know how to navigate that with his family member. and that maybe he heard me, and what I thought was happening on the other side was never happening.
Mm.
And so this, how could I have maybe done something differently? Although this is super scary, maybe I would have said, instead of something that we agreed upon early on was your issues with your family, you address. The issues with my family, I address. Maybe it would have been better to say the issues we have, we address together.
Together.
Whether my family or your family.
Yeah. I think that, I don't remember who, it was somebody that I was listening to, a preacher that said, we do it to, I think it was the Beveres, in their book, The Story of Marriage. They said, you set the stage, but we do it together. So if it's your family, you set the stage, but it's both of us going. So whatever we're addressing, we're doing it together.
You agree, and you come as one front.
As one front, yeah.
Well, and I think that that's key is it possible to come as one front? And I think depending again on the dynamic that that person has with their family member, there may be past and there may be history, where you may come as a front together, but you may be left being the one speaking and then coming out on the bad side of things.
Yeah.
Because then your spouse is not speaking up. But what I meant with that was you come together to watch him speak.
I think also it also has a lot to do with the foundation, though. I think from the start, it has a lot to do with the foundation. So one thing I've heard, and one thing I've seen being successful, not all the time, but it's when from that onset, family members know that it's both of us and not one. So from either side, and it can be difficult because some family are like, we're still in control. So it makes it even harder. But if that foundation has been made that you are still family, but this is us, this is our own unit coming, being part of this one, it makes it a little lighter. I'm just thinking about somebody that has to go into a relationship where family, the extended family has a strong hold. What would be your advice to them? Because you've lived it. What would be your advice? Like, where will you say, start here?
I think asking the right questions and having the difficult conversations, whatever it is, from the start, because then you are going into something willingly and with open eyes. So if someone tells me I have a brother that has a disability and I've decided that whatever my brother is, I will either have to step away for a few weeks, but I am going to help my brother. I go into this marriage understanding that there is something that is coming with my spouse.
Yeah.
And that is important. And that it doesn't mean that I am important or not, but I also means I am well aware. And then later on, I think it would be unfair to say, well, you're spending time with your brother because you're helping him. What about our children? Well, I knew this before I married you. So I think, again, asking those difficult conversations and then being around each other's family enough time to see the dynamic. Value me enough to prioritize my mental health. And value comes from what you feel is important to each of you.
Join us next week as we complete our conversation.
Reminder, you have what it takes, you just have to say it. Be a student. Only you can do what you're created to do. Visit our website www.SistasLetsTalk.com. That is www.SistasLetsTalk.com. Ask a question, leave a comment, or let us know how you're holding up. Subscribe to Sisters Let's Talk wherever you listen to podcasts. We want you to be the first to know when another episode is ready. One tiny favor, sis. Let's invite other sisters to the lounge.